Before I get to anything, I just wanted to put a little disclaimer. I have not finished Dexter.
You need to leave!
The main reason I didn't finish Dexter initially was because of the negative stigma its ending has, which kind of turned me off to finishing the show. However, I've become more open-minded since then, and I decided that I'm going to go finish Dexter to determine its quality for myself. But before I do that, I wanted to discuss the first 2 seasons, and more specifically, talk about its villains. If there's one thing that fans of the show love to talk about more than the titular character, it's his major antagonists, who usually end up determining how great the season is based on how well they complement the themes and Dexter as a character. Almost all of Dexter's major antagonists in the first 4 seasons are great at accomplishing this, but a major flaw this series has is how easily they wasted 2 of their best villains so early. Let's start with the first season's antagonist, who is very creatively named
the Ice Truck Killer.
What separates the ITK from any other episodic villain is the strange amount of knowledge this person seems to have on Dexter. Not only does this give a lot of intrigue as to the identity of this individual and why he would possibly have so much knowledge on our protagonist, it also serves as a great way to exposit information about Dexter's past to the audience. We later find out around halfway throughout the season that Rudy Cooper, someone Deborah has been dating in the season, is our Ice Truck Killer. And in a decision that I really enjoy, the writers let us sit with this information for a solid 4 episodes, and in that time, Dexter and Rudy have a few interactions which serve as great bits of foreshadowing once you know who he really is. Through a series of events involving Angel and Deborah getting kidnapped by Rudy, Dexter eventually pieces together his secret identity. This leads to a climactic finale where Dex searches for clues on his sister's disappearance, which alerts Doakes' suspicions and gives birth to this gem of a meme.
Surprise, motherfucker!
A neat detail I noticed on rewatch, if you look at any scene with Doakes and Brian, you could tell just by the way he looks at him that Doakes has a strange feeling about him, much like he does with Dexter. Anyways, this all leads to Dexter piecing together his childhood and discovering that the Ice Truck Killer is actually his long-lost brother named
Brian Moser.
Brian's absence in Dexter's life, both physically and psychologically, is explained by their tragic upbringing, with the both of them having been separated after the fact due to Harry's poor judgment. His purpose as a character is justified, since Brian basically gives us a perspective of what would have occurred to Dexter had he not been taken into the hands of foster care and instead left in a mental hospital. With everything we know about Dexter by the end of season 1, it makes us realize how his psychopathic tendencies are just an effect of having gone through something so traumatic. Brian, despite being a complete psycho who lacks a moral code like his brother, is still able to be empathized with, as he is just as much of a victim as his brother was, with the only difference between the two is that he didn't have anyone around to help him. But to be fair, Dexter didn't really get the help he deserved when his own foster father basically exploited his trauma for the sake of justice. The scene we get between them after his identity has been revealed is one of the best written parts of the show, because before this, Dexter didn't really have anyone to be himself with until now. Imagine what the next seasons would look like with Brian in the picture. He could serve to be a devil on Dexter's shoulder, enabling parts of him which cause Dex to slowly lose grip of Harry's code. Or perhaps we could see the opposite and witness Brian go through a character arc. I'm excited to see how the story continues now that Dexter has someone that he can finally be himself with, since there is no possibility that the showrunners are going to kill Brian off in the first season, no matter how contrived it would have been, because Brian is just oozing with limitless potential. What? A character that should have been a series-long antagonist and would have given us a dozen noteworthy conversations, yet you decided to kill him off in the first season? Now, I can admit that it would have been a tad bit contrived for Brian to just flee without killing Deborah off, as he is convinced she is what's keeping Dexter from becoming just like him. But you know what? I would have actually preferred if they had done that, if it meant keeping Brian's character alive. I haven't read the books, but from what I've heard, Brian actually survives this encounter with Dexter and makes a bunch of appearances in the next entries, which just makes sense to me. I'm aware that the source material differs heavily from the show, but they could have at least tried to keep Brian around. One other thing I have an issue with, and I'm definitely in the minority here, but Brian's whole plotline feels like it would have been way better served in a final season of Dexter. There's a stark difference on how I felt watching the show's first season than the others, as personally, it was way more interesting for me to watch Dexter when I wasn't aware of how his dark passenger was formed. Don't get me wrong, I have no issue with how the story was delivered to us originally, but a part of me was kind of bummed when Dexter's origins had been given to us so early, as I assumed that it would have been this series-long mystery. Despite my critiques of Brian's death and how early his story was told to us, this doesn't diminish the show's quality at all. More so, it spoiled me, because I assumed that the other seasons were going to be on the same level of quality as the first, if not better. And it's not like they've played all their cards yet. Doakes is still alive, and his growing suspicions of Dexter by the season's finale is surely going to make the show way more interesting from now on. I'm confident the writers are saving up a fantastic season in the future, because there is no way the writers would waste yet another amazing character and storyline so You know, I really need to shut my mouth sometimes. If you were to show someone who's never seen the series a picture of any character from Dexter, it's likely that the one they'd be able to recognize first is Doakes. Sergeant James Doakes acts as a foil to Dexter, since out of everyone in the show, he's
the only one who gets the creeps from me.
His role in the show has basically been immortalized through memes and edits, as while I'm sure not everyone has a coworker who they suspect to be a serial killer, we've all had at least one theory we knew to be true despite never having any proof of it. Due to his sheer popularity, amount of media surrounding him, and role in the show, I assumed that Doakes would be around for its entirety, so you could imagine my surprise when they decided to kill him off in the second season. It's already bad enough that they decided to waste yet another great character and storyline so early, but the way it gets resolved makes it even more infuriating than Brian's case. Unlike the previous or future seasons, where the plot is derived from the serial killer Dexter is hunting, the conflict for this season centers around Dexter being the one hunted down. This all occurs because a few scuba divers found his stash of bodies under the ocean, and when I first saw this, two things crossed through my head. The first was, oh, they're finally doing the storyline where Dexter gets caught. Then it slowly turned into, wait a minute, this is only the second season, and there's still a bunch more after this one. Dexter's gonna be fine. And that's where the issue arises, because from the moment I saw those bodies in the sea, all the expectations I had for the season were immediately downplayed, as I knew exactly how it was going to end, with Dexter escaping scot-free. Now, it's not like all hope was lost, as sometimes finding out how a character gets out of a troubling situation like this is interesting, even though you know how it's likely to end. But that's where the second issue arises. Why in the world would you have the public discover Dexter's work in the second season, especially after you literally gave us his origin story in the previous one? The showrunners basically gave us two of their best gourmet meals in a row, and while it's good food, you couldn't have given us a few appetizers first? But let's ignore the meta issues for a moment, because outside of them, this season is actually great, until you get to the ending. After his stash of bodies get discovered, the FBI starts an investigation on the
Bay Harbor Butcher.
And due to Doakes' increasing suspicions, this obviously leaves Dexter in quite the pickle. Dexter is able to temporarily get Doakes off his tracks after he discovers that he's a drug addict and slow down the FBI's progress against him. All of this ends up falling apart, however, when the FBI conclude that the Bay Harbor Butcher is a part of law enforcement from a manifesto sent by Dexter himself, and eventually Doakes' suspicions of him rises back up when he finds out that Dexter isn't a drug addict. Side tangent, I always found how Doakes switched up so fast to be a bit contrived. At this point, Doakes thinks all of Dexter's weird behavior is due to his drug addiction, and when he mentions this to Deborah, she says,
"Are you high? He's never even smoked a cigarette."
Instead of hearing this and thinking, oh, Dexter must have kept the secret hidden from his sister as well, his senses start rising back up and his investigation of Dexter continues. It's not like they needed to add much as well. A few more lines from Deborah would have helped make it more believable that Doakes' murder radar would suddenly go off again. Doakes' investigation eventually leads him to find Dexter's blood slides, which ends up being his undoing after the FBI discovers them in the back of his trunk. Ironically, Dexter is later put in charge of investigating the blood slides due to his rivalry with Doakes. I don't think I have to explain how astronomically contrived it is for A, Doakes to leave the blood slides on his trunk, B, the FBI to find said blood slides, C, not have them immediately analyzed, and D, put Dexter in charge of said investigation. Doakes is soon able to catch up to Dexter and discover the truth about him. Unfortunately for Doakes, the show isn't named after him, so he gets apprehended and caged as Dexter deduces how he's going to deal with the sergeant. One thing I really like about their interactions here is how the two of them actually start bonding by the end of it. You can tell that Dexter never really hated Doakes and is only caging him for the sake of his own self-preservation. I knew from the beginning that Doakes was likely not going to survive this encounter, as there was no reasonable way he would have stayed out of Dexter's business if he was still alive, especially with what he knows of him now. Unlike Brian's death, however, the showrunners have found a way to make the early demise of such a fantastic character brimming with potential. I'm aware how counterintuitive that sounds, but if you really think about it, the only way Dexter is going to get off scot-free from this whole ordeal is if Doakes dies, and the only logical way that happens is if he kills him. So far, Dexter has only targeted people who fit the code, and while yes, Doakes has killed in the past, at the end of the day, he's still a civilian who's just doing his job. But as we later learn in the season, Harry's #1 rule wasn't targeting people who deserve it, it was
don't get caught.
While it's still a decision I don't like, the writers have somehow found a way to make killing Doakes off so early improve upon the narrative. I was actually intrigued at where the story would go after this, because there is absolutely zero chance they'd screw this up.
Who's out there? Anybody out there?
Why is Lila here?
What are you? His accomplice?
I'm his soulmate.
Oh no. This genuinely made me stop watching the show for a week because of how baffled I was. You were this close to greatness. All you had to do was have Dexter kill Doakes. But decisions which would actually further our character? Why have that when you can have our secondary antagonists take care of the issue for us? The worst part about all of this isn't the fact that Lila kills Doakes, although that is bad enough. It's the fact that this leaves Lila as the final antagonist for season 2. Not Doakes, not the FBI, not Lundy, not anyone. Lila has an interesting role in the narrative, but any motivation I had to talk about it was drained the moment the writers made her do this. All of this made the season finale underwhelming. Despite the high quality of prior episodes, the ending just left such a sour taste on my mouth that I can't reasonably put it above the 1st or 4th seasons in my rankings. That's all for this video. I might do a review of the other seasons, Original Sin, New Blood, and Resurrection sometime soon, but don't expect that to be my next video. A part of me is hoping the negative reception seasons 5 through 8 got are false, and the remaining ones are actually great. Although the fact they made 2 sequel series to fix their ending does not boost my confidence.